Hi everyone, I'm Paulette from Tulip Square, and this week I'm going to show you how to make the diamond point block. This is kind of a pretty looking block, isn't it? Lots of different color possibilities. This block, when it's put together and put in something, I believe is a 12-inch block. It's not very difficult to make. It's got some half square triangles and some other shapes, some flying geese, which I like making anyway. So we're going to head over to the sewing machine and make this. Let's go. Okay, to make this block, you're going to need white, and you will be cutting that in 3 sizes. You're going to cut it in rectangles and large and small squares. And you're going to also need 3 other colors. I'm using a purple, a turquoise, and a yellow. The yellow are just the smaller squares. I'm going to set those aside. The purple are the rectangles, small squares, and large squares. I'm going to set the small squares aside. And the turquoise is large and small squares, and I'm also going to set the small squares aside. So you're going to take your larger turquoise squares and your larger purple squares, and you're going to pair them up with white. You're going to draw a diagonal line on the middle of each one. Draw a nice visible line, and then you're going to sew a 1/4 inch on each side of that, a whole seam all the way down on each side of that line you drew. And do that with all of these white ones that are paired with the turquoise and the purple. Now once you've sewn a seam on each side of the line you drew, you're going to cut on those lines you drew. And this will give you 2 squares that are identical, and they'll both look like this. And you go ahead and press these towards the colored square. So I'm going to cut all these and press them. Now when you're done with those pieces, you will have 4 of the purple and white triangles and 8 of the turquoise and white triangles. And then we can set those aside for a few minutes. And I'm going to take my purple rectangles and my white squares, and I'm going to make some flying geese. And if you don't know how to make flying geese, you're going to take one of your white squares and you're going to put it right here on each one of these. On all 4 of your purple rectangles, you're going to put a white square in the same corner, and you're going to sew a diagonal line from this point up to that point of the white. Now you can draw it on there if you want, or you can follow a line on your sewing machine, or whatever you like to do. But make sure now this time you're sewing right on that center line. So if you draw the center line, unlike the first pieces we did where we sewed on each side of the line, this time you're going to sew right on the line. Just a single seam. So go ahead and do that on all 4 of your purple pieces with a white in the same corner. I almost forgot to mention, when you're sewing something like this from a point to a point, it's easier to start from this edge where you've got another piece of fabric up there, rather than starting from this point where if you put it this way, your sewing machine will have a tendency to kind of chew up those ends. So I like to start from this side and go this way always. So once you've got these all sewn, then what you're going to do is, while you've still got it laid flat like this through both layers, you cut off that corner and just leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then you're going to press this up like that. So go ahead and do that on all 4 pieces. Now once you've got that done, what you're going to do is put a white square in the opposite corner of each piece, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to sew from this corner down to this corner. You'll be going right over the edge of your first white one, and you're supposed to be doing that, okay? So just go straight across. Well, not straight, diagonally. Now I'm going to do the same thing with these. I'm going to go ahead and cut the corner off. When you've got them all done and pressed, you've got 4 pieces like this. These are called flying geese. So you've got 4 of those. You can set those aside now for a few minutes, and then you're going to take your white rectangles and you're going to sew purple squares to them. You're going to make 4 more flying geese, just opposite colors of what these were. These are going to be white with purple corners instead of purple with white corners. And then you'll have 4 like this. You've got four flying geese like this and 4 flying geese like this. Okay, next what you're going to do is take these little yellow squares And you're going to take 4 of them and take one of these turquoise squares like this and sew one to each yellow square like this. Just do 4 like this. Make sure that your triangles are going this way. And just sew one to each of 4 of the yellow squares. Okay, then when you finish those, go ahead and press them towards the yellow. And then take your remaining 4 with the turquoise and take a purple one and sew these together in pairs like this. Now you have 4 pieces like this and 4 pieces like this, and you're just going to pair these up and sew them together like so. Now you've got 4 squares like this, and you can set those aside for a minute, and you can take your flying geese and you're going to pair these up so the one with the white corners is on top of the one with the purple corners, and you're going to make 4 pieces like this so it kind of looks like an arrow. Now you've got 4 squares like this. We're going to set those aside, and lastly we're just going to take these 4 little remaining squares and sew them together checkerboard style. And once we do that, then we've got all our components, and all we got to do is put them together. So just go sew these in a square. And then you've got a square like this, a little checkerboard. Now if you did these all correctly, all of your squares are the same size. They're all about 4.5 inches. So now what you're going to do, we've got all the assembly little stuff done, so now we're just going to put the whole thing together. So you're going to start by making 2 rows like this, 2 strips. You're going to make 2 strips like this. So go ahead and do that and make sure you line up your seams at the corners. So now you've got 2 pieces like this, and then you just take your remaining pieces. Well, you can grab them, this piece, and you're going to sew your last 2 flying geese like this, so they're all flying away or pointing away. And just sew those like that, and it doesn't matter which way you put this thing, whichever way you want it. Doesn't make any difference. Now all that's left to do is sew your 3 strips together like so. So I'll go ahead and do that, and our block will be done. And there you have it. Your block is done. Isn't that a pretty block? I like that one. And this will be 12 inches in a finished piece. It's 12.5 right now. I hope you enjoyed that block. And now you know how to make the diamond point block. It's kind of a pretty block. I can picture a lot of these on a big bedspread. That would look really pretty. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the little bell if you'd like to be notified when we put up a new video every week. And if you need this free PDF, there's a link for it up here somewhere. So have a good week sewing, and we will see you again next week. Have a good week. Bye-bye.